Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and radio show. I'm your host, Sarah Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you're notified every week with my new podcasts on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There's no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health. And you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey, in addition to truly taking control of your health. The protocols and supplements I discuss are all found at sarahbantahealth.com. Today, we are talking about my favorite new technology, the BioCharger, and we've got Jim Law and Jim Girard, Jim times two. Jim Law has served as a managing member of Advanced Biotechnologies since co-founding the firm in 2013. With a focus on strategy and business development, his entrepreneurial track records include founding and co-founding two prior startups that have implemented innovative and disruptive technology-based solutions that changed the way their respective industries did business. And Jim Girard brings more than 25 years of subtle energy research and development experience to the team, which led to the introduction of the original BioCharger in 1993 and 1988. He was privileged to have studied under a protégé of Nikola Tesla. So I'm going to let them both talk a little bit more about their journey and how this came about. Welcome, Jim and Jim. How are you today?
We're doing great. We're looking forward to an electrifying conversation.
So before we get into the science and everything about the BioCharger, I'm just going to tell you my experience. Since hitting rock bottom and since my son had leukemia at the age of 9, I've been on a journey to feel my best. And that's not just through supplements or diet, but through exercise and sleep. And then, of course, cutting edge technologies. Any machine or device I could get my hands on, I've tried. And I use my business as an excuse to have to buy them. With that being said, you look in my cabinets and underneath my desk and in my rooms, hidden in different places, I've got all these different little technologies that have gotten more improved. And when I came across the BioCharger at Heather Hineker's Ascent and Adaptation facility, I thought, okay, how am I going to get this in my house? How do I convince my husband and my kids that this thing is going to service us all? So I started having my kids go to Heather's and try out the machine. And I don't know if you guys know, but kids will tell you the truth. They're like animals where there's no placebo. And if it doesn't work, they're going to say, Mom, you're crazy. No way. They kept showing up for appointments to use the BioCharger themselves. So there you go. And fast forward to now that it is in my house, my dogs love to curl up to me when I'm being treated. So there you go, as far as the objective and placebo effect of animals and kids away from me who wants every new technology. So with that being said, I'm super excited about today because we're going to be getting into the science of it and how it differentiates itself from other technologies out there. So why don't we start with where did this journey begin? And when did you know that you really had something here?
Well, it's always good to kind of start where the problem we were trying to solve. And Jim has been working on it for about 25 years, but in that time, a condition that's a kind of a byproduct of our modern day lifestyles has continued to evolve and actually, become more and more of a factor of our health. And a statistic, I'll rattle off a couple of statistics. You can fact check all of them. One is that the EPA reported last year that 93% of our time is spent indoors. That is a phenomenon in itself. It's hard to believe, but most people, after they think about it, they realize, well, yeah, that's pretty significant amount of time inside. What are the consequences of that? Well, when you're inside, you're blocked from 4 key sources of energy that exist in nature. And by not having access to those sources, our bodies are depleted of the energy they need to function correctly at the cellular level. So another stat is chronic disease. In 2017, the CDC reported that about 4 in 10 American adults had at least one form of chronic disease. Now it's 6 in 10, and 4 in 10 have 2 or more. So kind of a conclusion you might begin to draw is the further away we get from nature, the sicker we become. And then the work of a Dr. Jerry Tennant, world-renowned MD, has a very interesting story. Great book, Voltage is Healing. But he studied 80 chronic diseases and found that they all had one common characteristic, and that was inadequate cellular voltage. And the penalty that we pay for that is that the 2 primary functions of healthy cells, which are uptake of nutrients and elimination of toxicity at the cellular level, diminish. And that while we're having this conversation, we're all making 3 to 4 million new cells a second. Our body, I love a saying I heard the other day, what creates our body heals our body. And the body is the amazing healing tool. It's just that while we're lacking this energy, our body's regenerating, 3 to 4 million cells a second, just not healthy new cells. And that's why our age, we degrade with age. And so in essence, what the BioCharger does is it replicates and amplifies those 4 key energies that exist in nature, so that by sitting next to it for 12 to 15 minutes, our bodies are exposed to these 4 energies in a very in a touch-free, very comfortable. You don't ingest anything, you don't exert yourself, you just enjoy it. In fact, as you well know, Sarah, you can do it, with 3 or 4 people simultaneously. So you're all getting the benefits of this, literally recharging your body while you're enjoying, the social aspect of it. It's kind of like a modern day campfire. So I'll let Jim, answer the question about, what was the brainchild of it all, but hopefully that makes a little sense into kind of what we're trying to do, and we can do a deep dive on the energy types as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, the history started in late 80s. I had a landscaping company while I was going to school, and started coming down with some alopecia. So first thing I looked at was my diet, thinking it was stuff that I was eating, and then secondly, I looked at being around the fertilizers, thinking that might be a problem. So I went to an organic farm convention, and that's when I first learned about Nikola Tesla. So from that point forward, I've been very fascinated with this whole idea of electricity. And then a year later, I read the book The Secret of Life by George Lahovsky, who had 20,000 of these systems that were out that he developed, and there were doctors, surgeons, universities that were investigating the benefits of it, that was chronicled in a book called The Waves That Heal also. So as I started to dig deeper into this, I found at the turn of 1900, there was 25,000 practitioners in the United States alone that were used in some form of energy medicine. And I was at Purdue University. I found an electrical therapy handbook that had almost 2,000 pages of different devices that were being used back then. So it just caught my eye, and I began to experiment with it. And my first claim to fame was adding the multi-gas tubes to a multi-wave oscillator that became what I was selling as a Bell's, or the earlier version of a BioCharger. So I kept on researching and found other researchers that were doing this, other things. There was a guy named Royal Rife that was experimenting with using a shortwave radio that he pulsed and was able to get some interesting results, and started seeing these different devices and each one doing things a little bit differently. And I really wanted to combine all their works into one system, which is really the genesis of the BioCharger NG, is combining all these different works and really bringing it forth to the 21st century. So when I met Jim and Colin, our other partner, I was all analog. I was using technologies from literally 100 years ago, and it was all very basic. And it was a nice synergy between the three of us, that we could introduce the modern technology to an old problem and really have something new and different, which is what we end up creating with the BioCharger.
At Ascent Adaptation, Heather has an in-body scan that measures the phase angle of the cells. Of course, it measures body fat and bone density and, inflammation, intracellular water, extracellular water. And my constitution, I'm a salmon swimming upstream. I always had inflammation and extracellular water, and I eat all the right things. I do all the right things, right? Not until the BioCharger did that number shift for me. There was nothing else that I had changed, but it reduced the inflammation systemically in my body significantly. And no other supplement, no other device, no other protocol helped with that until I hit the BioCharger. So that was really interesting. And Nikola Tesla, his technology is incorporated in some of my supplements, the scalar frequency. I enhance my supplements with scalar frequency. So I'd like to dive into the 4 energies and what has come from Nikola Tesla. You mentioned Rife, and the machine incorporates Rife codes. I remember when I was trying to look into all these technologies to get a Rife machine, and you've got to hold on to these 2 handles, and there's a computer set up and a lot of wires, and it was very overwhelming and complicated for me, and I'm pretty good at that stuff. And that's the other part I love about the BioCharger. You literally press a button and it runs a program, and you just sit back and relax. But let's talk about the 4 energies that are incorporated in the BioCharger.
Sure. So we have an electric field that emits from the top. We have a magnetic field, or PEMF, that emits at the base. We have radio frequencies and harmonics, and we have a light component. So the idea is, in healthy cellular function, you have these positive, negative charges surrounding a cell membrane. These positive, negative charges create a concentration that trigger ion channels. These ion channels could be the sodium potassium pump, or the ATP. Could be uptake of hormones, proteins, nutrients. At the same time, there's this detoxification effect of dealing with the toxicity in the nucleus of the cell. So when a cell becomes less healthy, there's not enough of that charge to trigger these healthy cellular functions. And it's been proven that you can take external electric fields and stress that cell membrane like a dielectric, and actually trigger these ion channels to trigger these healthy cellular functions. So normally, with nutrition or anything else, you're adding that charge potential around the cell membrane. But even if you don't have enough of that charge potential, you're really not getting anything to the nucleus of the cell. And a lot of times it's just being wasted away. And one of the big advantages is by making the cell membrane more permeable. When you take those supplements and things like that, it becomes that much more effective in uptaking nutrients and detoxification. So secondly, we produce a magnetic field at the base of the system. So there's many devices that are out there, the PEMF, so pulse electromagnetic fields, and primarily looking at the magnetic field side of it. So if you ever had in a magnetic field, what that affects is those positive, negative charges moving around the cell membrane. So as they're moving around in the body in the presence of a magnetic field, those ion charges pick up an electric charge to again trigger those healthy cellular function. So you're adding charge to the system through the ion charges surrounding the cell membrane. So in other words, the magnetic field and the electric field are sort of doing the same thing, but in different ways. One is making that cell membrane more permeable with the electric field, whereas the magnetic field is more working with those positive, negative charges as they're moving around in your body. So both of them trigger the uptake of nutrients and detoxification. Thirdly, we produce the radio frequencies and harmonics. So not only is cells magnetic and electric, but there's a vibrational component to it. So in physics, they started outlining what they call the magnetic resonance spectrum. So if you've ever had a magnetic resonant image or MRI, is what they're looking is within the nucleus of every cell, there's vibrations to it. And every cell falls in a wide range of frequencies from low kilohertz up to 20 gigahertz. And then above and beyond that is what they call the molecular band spectrum. So every molecule vibrates from 20 gigahertz and through infrared, far infrared, near infrared, up to visible light. And that's part of the reason why these infrared, far infrared, near infrared systems work, is because they're literally resonating on a molecular level and generating energy through sympathetic vibration. So what is sympathetic vibration? So in music class, if you've ever seen where they take two tuning forks of the same pitch. So if I strike one really hard, the other one starts to vibrate. Same thing with the radio. If I set my car radio station at 95.1 to a radio transmitter that's tuned to it, I actually pick up that energy of that signal. And it's tuned to one specific frequency. Well, your cell's like this one band radio receiver, a tuning fork, tuned to a specific frequency. And if I hit that right frequency at it, I can actually stimulate it through sympathetic vibration and adding energy into the system to help improve these healthy cellular functions. So we're literally generating hundreds of thousands of those frequencies that span that whole spectrum of the magnetic resonance spectrum, that AM, FM, shortwave, longwave, UHF, VHF, microwave, millimeter, all the way up to visible light. And what we're trying to do is really mimic what happens in nature. So, as we spoke earlier, we mentioned about, being outside, and why is that so important? So is it just necessarily that sunlight and the infrared stuff that we get from sunlight, or it's not just the gas excitation of the natural light, but there's also frequencies and harmonics from lightning discharge. So most people don't realize we have 100 lightning strikes on the planet every single second. Each one generates hundreds of thousands of harmonics that span that whole spectrum of AM, FM, shortwave, longwave, UHF, VHF, all the way to visible light. They begin resonating certain on a cellular level as well as a molecular level. Now, every other planet's doing the same thing. What we call solar flares or solar storms are nothing really but atmospheric discharges on the sun that generate so much energy that sometimes it disrupts communication. And if you've been following the news, there's been a lot of northern light activity as a result of that more energy to, and that all contributes to what we call cosmic rays. So any spinning object in the universe is generating these plasma discharges that generate hundreds of thousands of harmonics that contribute to this natural energy that we evolved in. So what we're doing is we're mimicking that using the electric fields, or sometimes with the arc rod you'll see the plasma discharge, but we're generating variable frequencies and harmonics so we can actually target it. So in nature, it requires the variability of clouds to generate random sets of hundreds of thousands of harmonics. With the electronics, we can actually target and generate specific hundreds of thousands of harmonics that follow known mathematical principles. We can apply equations to calculate, and we verify through third-party analysis that we're generating those spectrums of frequencies and harmonics. So now you know what frequencies and harmonics you're generating. Now you can target for particular outcomes, which is what our recipes are all about. So our recipes are targeting. So when you understand how things are vibrating on a magnetic resonance spectrum or on a molecular band spectrum, or you can look at the diameter of the cell. So there's a certain diameter of every cell that corresponds to a length that corresponds to a wavelength. So there's multiple different ways you can begin to resonate on a cellular level that again adds energy to the system. And that's really what the uniqueness of the recipes is. Each recipe has generated a unique set of harmonics. And then finally, we have a visible light component. So as I alluded to a little bit earlier, is you have this natural light, not the sunlight, but there's a natural light. And that's really all these gases in the atmosphere. That's really that blue light. So one of the most common questions children ask their parents is, what causes the blue in the sky? Many of them may falsely say that it's the reflection of the water because the earth is mostly water, but it's actually all these gases in the atmosphere that get excited by that sun's energy that we're talking about, that excites them to fluorescent, and it literally produces thousands of wavelengths in the visible light, in the infrared, far infrared, near infrared, visible light spectrum. So with those different tubes that we had that we've introduced, so we're producing a pretty close to about 1,000 different wavelengths in that infrared, far infrared, near infrared, visible light spectrum. So with the light now, we're adding that other, special sauce that we get outside, which is that natural light component.
So
that was the high level explanation of it. Do you want to go deep?
Right. My brain's blown, but okay, a couple questions. One is, you mentioned ATP, you also mentioned voltage. So when you're talking about low voltage in the body and we need to raise our voltage, is that correlated to an increase in ATP production?
Well, it affects the way that cell is gating. So the idea is when a cell becomes less healthy, there's not enough of that charge potential to trigger and move back and forth the sodium potassium pump, which is the precursor to ATP in the mitochondria. So if you're not moving those things in and out, you're not uptaking and moving back and forth those positive, negative charges, you're not getting that energy for the mitochondria or the ATP. So it's been proven that you can take these different fields and actually bump that up. There's plenty of scientific evidence that talks about the effects of both PEMF and pulsed electric fields, where you're affecting that either the charge potential around the cell membrane or affecting the cell membrane itself to trigger these healthy cellular functions. Now, it's important you have to have nutrition and other things to move things in and out. So it isn't just a matter of gating it. It's important, and I think it's a really good balance, whether it's IVs and things like that. We're finding that people, they respond much better to those just because you're able to really get everything into the nucleus of the cell.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about the different recipes specifically. So you overlaid just a general but deep explanation of how the energies work in the body. Where does the light part of it compare to red light therapy? Because you hear a lot about red light therapy and these devices that people are using. Are we getting some of the red light benefit from the BioCharger?
Sure, I'll touch on that. So, differentiation. We're using 6. So for the light component, we're using photobiomodulation, which is whether it's a PBM or red light or even infrared, far infrared, or cold laser. Those are all healing frequencies within the visible light spectrum. And they're generally produced by one of 3 gases: argon, xenon, or helium, is it?
Yeah, as far as those cold lasers, they use all of them. They use from the argon, xenon, or they'll use, the helium, neon tubes that I've seen.
Okay, so they'll use 3 or 4 different gases. Typically, they combine 1 or 2. What we're doing is we're using 6 element gases. There are 12 tubes, but 6 element gases that combined represent a superset of the benefit you're getting from red light, infrared, far infrared, because we're casting a broader range of frequency within the visible light spectrum that are known to have health and wellness benefits. So, some people say, oh, wait a second, if I go stand next to a jube wall for 10 minutes in my underwear, and I know something's happening because I'm sweaty and I'm comfortable, I can't wait for it to end. And how can that possibly compare to sitting comfortably in a chair next to the BioCharger with this beautiful light kind of radiating around me? How can I possibly be getting the benefit? And it's because it's frequency. The light's producing frequencies that are healing. And so kind of along those lines, one of the earlier questions you asked is what is a differentiator? Why is BioCharger unique? And there's really a few reasons. One is it's the I'll use the term biohacking. Some people like it, some don't, but biohacking technology is known as ways to improve our health and wellness and cognitive performance through technology or better processes. And what we're actually doing is stacking the four energy types together so that there is, as Jim mentioned, there's a lot of different PEMF devices out there. Most of them are very low power PEMF, like the mats and things like that. So you have to be physically in contact with them for 30, 60, 90 minutes. Some people sleep on them. And then you have kind of the higher end PEMF, and we use the same design as the higher end. So it's generating a very high concentration of PEMF, and your body is getting it holistically. Your body's truly bathed with this energy, and as long as you're within a 3-foot radius, you're getting very high concentration of it. And that's all. That's another thing. These are all measurable. So with the photonic energy for photobiomodulation light, and then with the frequencies and harmonics, you made the reference to Rife, and maybe some of your audience knows, maybe they don't, but back in the 20s and 30s, 100 years ago, Royal Rife, a scientist in San Diego, was able to prove he cured cancer using shortwave radios and using a high-powered microscope that he developed. It could actually look at a living organism at 10,000 power that took us almost 100 years to duplicate. So talk about ahead of your time, right? But the study that was done was conclusive that 12 of 14 stage 4 cancer patients from Loma Linda, California, were cancer-free at the end of a 30-day experiment. Was actually documented and published in the San Diego Tribune, and then everything went quiet. And he was very, like Tesla, was kind of suppressed. And but the work continued. So when you look at the frequencies and harmonics, there's an industry around Rife machines. We're a superset of that. It's because of the way that we use software to control not only frequencies, but frequency sets, and we can combine them with the intensity, the energy, the power level, the light forms, and all of that. And then when you look at the high voltage, that's kind of the special sauce, because and there's a $50 million study done that we're happy to share with you or any of your listeners, that pointed out that by applying high voltage to a cell membrane, it causes the cell membrane to electroporate, and that you can actually produce that effect using air as a conductor. So if you look at a biocharger, there's one, kind of an image of one there, that Tesla coil up the middle, it's the only patented solid state Tesla coil in the world, is producing 600,000 to 700,000 volts. And you may have seen photos, or you may have a light bulb where you hold it away from it and can see it actually light the same way those gas tubes do. There's no wiring to them, as you know, because we're producing it the same way, replicating Mother Nature. The lightning strikes that are happening around the world create infinite frequencies and harmonics that charge the atmosphere, that take the element gases, excite them to fluorescence, which is why the sky's blue. Same effect in the biocharger. And unlike, a lot of kind of, you think about the Swiss Army knife. Okay, it's got a little bit of everything. What we've done very carefully is to make sure that we have the best in class of each of the four energy stacks. And then we knew it was much bigger than us. And the point on the recipes, we created a cloud infrastructure so that we can continue to add more. And now we have, thousands of clients worldwide. Many are practitioners and researchers that are continually developing new recipes, and recipes are our name for frequency and energy programs that are designed for a specific outcome, that are continually enhanced and added. And so, the craziest person in the world is the person that bought the first biocharger from us 5 years ago. I mean, what did they took a big risk. But they had about 10 recipes then, and now with every new client in the world, they have 1,200 plus recipes, and they are effective. As you well know, they're from anything from helping with relief from a headache to skin conditions to sleep to energy to pain relief, and then anything in between.
Yeah, and I want to speak to some just from my perspective. And I mentioned my kids; they will tell me right away if something doesn't work, whether it's food, supplements, whatever it is. So, with the spike protein being infiltrated in all of us now, there's a whole different set of challenges that we're all experiencing. Now, one of them that we're seeing is PMS symptoms with women and menstrual issues, infertility. My 16-year-old daughter, her menstrual cycle was, her pain level normally 2 years ago was about a 3. Since the spike protein, in the last couple months, it went up to a 12, to the point where she was yelling at me, "I want to pass out. I can't handle this," throwing up, nauseous, couldn't go to school, horrific pain. I had never experienced that myself. I threw her on the floor next to the BioCharger, and I started running programs specifically for PMS support, for inflammation, for pelvic inflammatory disease, all of these things. And within a series of treatments, she went from a 12, 1 out of 10 pain level. She was at a 12, and she went down to a 5. Now, I said, okay, so next month, you can't just wait until the day of. You've got to do some programs through the month. You've got to eat anti-inflammatory foods and take a couple of these new supplements. And she did. This last month, she looked at me and she goes, "I started my period." And I said, "Well, are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, "Well, where's your pain?" She goes, "a 3. She used the machine before it came, and the day of, she went to school, she went to practice, she lived her life, and not one pill of Advil was consumed. And
Beautiful.
it was a game changer in our household, because if anyone is living with a girl that is going through that, it affects everybody in the house. The other aha moment, and this was before I owned mine, was when my other daughter was traveling across the country, came home. She said, "Mom, I just don't feel good." Her team had raced on the East Coast, flew home. Half the team was getting sick. They took off practice. Most of the girls didn't make it to school. So I sent her to use the BioCharger on the viral program, because with my Genius Insight app, I was able to see that it was viral. And her temperature was up 5 degrees. She looked like death. She literally was not able to move. She did the viral treatment. She went to school the next day. Within 2 days, she was back at rowing practice, which is unheard of for her. So when you have experiences like that, you know you have something. And I used to throw all of my other technologies at situations like this, and they'd help a little bit, but nothing so black and white with the results of this machine. So I just wanted to speak to that. And that also brings up how you've talked about the science behind the BioCharger, and we've touched on the recipes. But how can you explain how different frequencies will target that virus, or will target the PMS symptoms, or inflammation, or performance enhancing, but how the recipes are differentiated from each other, and how those frequencies, because they're different, they act differently in the body?
Sure. So I think that there's multiple ways it's working, especially with the viruses. So with the virus, when you apply an electric field, and when you look at, like, in food processing and water treatment, now they're finding that you can apply these high voltage electric fields, and it literally fries them without really affecting the surrounding healthy part of your body, mainly because it requires very little energy in order to do it. So you can imagine that healthy cells, they tend to be perfectly spherical. Perfectly spherical evenly distributes this electric charge, and it makes it hold a lot more charge. Now, when the cell becomes diseased, they tend to be more like a football. So it concentrates the charges on the edges, so they can't build up enough of charge potential, and you can actually affect with the electric field. But when you go into viruses, they tend to be rod shaped. So their ability to evenly distribute that charge is very minimal. So electric field has a direct effect on those. So I think that electric and magnetic effect were probably the strongest factors associated with dealing on a viral. But when you talk more on things on a cellular level where we're targeting, more healthy cells or cells in general, that's where those frequencies and harmonics live by. And also, each one's already tuned to its specific frequency. So they're like your car radio. When you just set it that one station, they're only looking for one station. So anytime you broadcast, you're affecting things more on a frequency level. And nature requires a whole universe of these lightning discharges happening everywhere to create that pure perfect noise. We're only able to create hundreds of thousands, but in that sea that we're generating, we're affecting across that whole cellular spectrum. So as long as you know how you want to target things from a frequency perspective, then that's where really I think more of the frequencies come in at.
But Jim, in terms of explain a little bit more about like the World Frequency Foundation.
Yeah. So when we build recipes and things like, from our perspective of actually building recipes, there's many different sources that we look to. There's a World Frequency Foundation where they've looked at different vibrations of all the different cells. I mean, you look at what the physics world has started way back in the 20s, the magnetic resonance spectrum. So even though a lot of this other subtle energy technology sort of fell by the wayside, the diagnostic side, the MRIs, the PET scans, and things like that have always evolved in understanding that vibrational part of the cell. So there's a lot of research into that. There's another foundation that we subscribe to that look at the diameter of all the different types of cells. And when you look at the diameter, there's a length to correspond to the wavelength to a frequency. So if you hit that frequency, you can begin to affect it again in a different way with the recipes. So the frequencies and harmonics are just one of the 4 energy types that are generated. And one of the neat parts about it isn't like we took 4 different energy types and put it in a box. The beauty of the way the BioCharger, the Tesla coil is built, is it generates that as its own device. So it's not like it. How it all really evolved is I had a system that we were generating these 4 fields, and it was really just had a system based off of Tesla's work. And then we were identifying what were those fields that were being generated. We could measure this magnetic field, we could measure this electric field, we could measure the frequencies and harmonics. So we wanted to really just evolve it into a point of being able to control it now with the way in which we're doing it now. So that's probably the most unique part. And we took really Rife's idea of what he was doing with the shortwave radio and applied it to Tesla's work. And that's really the uniqueness of those variable frequencies and harmonics. So it's not really a Rife machine, it's a hybrid Rife machine. But we took the most important factor, which is how he generated his variable frequencies and harmonics and how he pulsed coils at different frequencies, and then all the science that went along with it.
I'm just blown away, and we could go on for so long on all of the science behind this, but I want to give some examples of what some of the recipes are for recovery, for balance, for performance, for focus, for energy. I can tell you one of my favorites is Get the Edge. Just to get me ready to go for whether it's a podcast or a workout. My girls love to do Runner's Edge right before a workout. And I can tell you that they are getting their personal records or personal bests on the rowing machines when they do it. Just for focus and energy, thyroid, viral, just parasite cleanses. I always do the parasite cleanse around the full new moon and the new moon, the hormonal balance ones, the HTP, so the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, which is really important, and it's getting really sideways in most people in the last 2 years. Thyroid issues have become rampant. So I've seen a huge difference with the thigh up and the HPT programs. But one thing that I love is and it stems from the question before I bought my BioCharger from my very skeptical husband. He said, Sarah, you have all these devices. What's going to happen next year when there's a new one comes out that's better than the BioCharger? And my answer to him was that the recipes keep getting upgraded and uploaded. But if you could maybe expand on that, and how are you going to keep the BioCharger at the top of the list of cutting edge technologies?
I think there's a couple ways to answer that. One is that, as you know, we're not a medical device and we can't make claims. We're not medical professionals. The BioCharger, all of these recipes, even recipes that are for pretty much any condition that you can think of, we support recovery from, and that's our story, and we're sticking to it. But what we're committed to, we had a support team, and most folks in this industry are not used to getting great support. They get something that shows up, they might have to put it together, and they're kind of on their own, and maybe look at some online documentation. And one of the things that struck me, I'm an old Apple computer guy, and one of the things that I learned from Steve Jobs years ago was, forget about the technology, begin with the user experience. And that's why we work so hard to allow the BioCharger to not require you to have apparatus or to hold things or to feel any discomfort, and kind of drove that. And we said, if we could do that with one person, think what we can do with, let's do it with 4 or multiple, so people can enjoy that. So, we're coming into our own in terms of, businesses now that are offering this to others, because not everyone can afford one. By the way, any of your audience that would like to go and have a free BioCharger experience, compliments of our team, you can either go to our website and find a BioCharger near me, or you can reach into our charge card. You can Google that charge card BioCharger, and it'll entitle you to a free use somewhere, so people can actually get a chance to experience it. But what we're doing is we've kind of changed customer support to client success. And what we mean by that is that we are very committed, whether it's an individual that's buying it for their own personal use, like you and your family, although, you've kind of got a skunk works going with all the leading technologies. So that's a dual purpose. But regardless of the client type, whether it's a business, an individual, whether they're a peak performance athlete, or somebody that's very health needy, let's call that, it's our job to help them optimize it for their best use, to get the most out of it for their application. And part of that, you've had an experience with our health optimization team where you can share, your personal health objectives or challenges, and we walk you through. So kind of like in the Bible where they talk about it, we can catch you fish and feed you for a day, or teach you how to fish. We really do both. But what we're doing that's enhancing it even more is most of our clients and most of your listeners are familiar with the term functional medicine. And, where you're really looking at your body as a composition of 15 systems or something like that. And that there's so much interrelationship, just like, our mind affects our health. There's no doubt about that. And so what we're working on is some software that will do what our health optimization does for you on demand. So you could literally have your phone, an app running on your phone, and go through kind of a checklist of here's my conditions right now. And it will download and stream the recipes and the recipe sets that will help you do that. That is like game changer.
Love it.
Yeah. And that's just one of the things that we're doing. We took a big risk this year, and we're putting 80% of our marketing budget went directly towards our clients that are using the BioCharger in their business to help them educate their clients, patients, and members. And so far we're seeing a lot of really good positive response in that, and we want our clients to be able to get the most out of it, but also help their clients get the most out of it, which is just been a game changer. The other thing is that our referral base is so strong. I mean, most people, the way they find out about us is through somebody else that had one, which is amazing. And so we've tried to find ways to really make it effective. When someone comes over and tries your BioCharger and they want to know more about it, we've got a very efficient system to help them quickly learn or get what they want to have. So we're continuing to really focus on the education and automating some of the things that only a human could do.
Wow, thank you, Jim. And yes, everybody can find out more at sarabantahealth.com about the BioCharger and contact me directly, and I can set you up with a trial. This machine's changed my life. It's changed my family's life. And we are going to have you back on because we didn't get into everything that I wanted to touch on today. And I have some ideas for you in going forward, and I'll talk to you about that going offline. But I just wanted to mention, because Jim mentioned the importance of supplementation and the other things going on with your cellular health as you're using the BioCharger. I just want to touch on hydration. But hydration is not just from water. It is from the proper minerals. And we talked about the sodium potassium pump, right? So we got to have the sodium and the potassium and all the right minerals. And you can get all of those in the accelerated ancient salt that is known to detox the cells. It's enhanced with scalar frequencies. It helps reorganize the DNA, really supports the BioCharger and the use of that, and supports intracellular hydration and the minimizing of the extracellular hydration. And to go along with that is the acceleradine, which increases ATP by 18 times. That the mitochondrial health is the powerhouse of the cells. So as you're working on it with the BioCharger, you're also giving the proper iodine to increase that ATP production naturally from the supplement. And the thyroid is the master endocrine gland controlling the adrenals, the gonads, and more. And the acceleradine iodine is helping support thyroid health. Most people, 9 out of 10 people now, are hypothyroid. So that is something that is really important for you to address. And from babies to elderly people, everybody needs the acceleradine. So thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone else for joining me today. If you can contact me directly through my website, sarabantahealth.com, about the BioCharger and about the supplements in your protocol and how to biohack. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of the BioCharger and if you're interested in trying it out or if you have any questions. And join the free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your health journey. The protocols and supplements and the BioCharger are all found at sarabantahealth.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products and across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and radio show. If you like what you hear today, please hit the subscribe button and share with a few of your friends who may need your help. This BioCharger is great for those people that don't want to do anything else for their health, like change their diet. So join us every Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. You can use the coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide on the supplements. Thank you again for joining us here on Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show, and have a great week.